Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UHS Frontier, watching the stars drift past through the main viewport. The exploration vessel had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, mapping new systems and looking for signs of life. So far, they had found only empty worlds and dead rocks, floating in the void. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Communications officer Danny Rodriguez worked at his station, scanning radio frequencies for any unusual signals. Dr. Lisa Carter, the ship's xenobiologist, studied data from their latest planetary survey on her tablet. Everything seemed normal and peaceful. Then Danny's equipment started making noise. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Danny said, adjusting his headphones. "This isn't natural. Someone is broadcasting this signal." Jake leaned forward in his chair, put it on speakers. The bridge filled with a series of clicks, whistles, and musical tones. The sounds were clearly artificial, but unlike anything in human databases. Lisa looked up from her tablet, her eyes wide with excitement. "That's not human," she whispered. "Captain, I think we're listening to aliens." The crew on the bridge stopped what they were doing. Everyone stared at the speakers. As the strange music continued, Jake felt his heart beating faster. In all of human space exploration, they had never found proof of intelligent life beyond Earth. "Danny, can you clean up the signal?" Jake asked. "Working on it, sir." Danny's fingers flew over his controls. "The signal is coming from about 12 light years away. It's very powerful, like they're broadcasting to anyone who will listen." The alien music continued for several minutes, then stopped. After a moment of silence, new sounds began. These were different, more urgent and desperate. Even without understanding the language, everyone on the bridge could hear the fear in the alien voices. "Lisa, I need you to work with Danny on this," Jake said. "Figure out what they're trying to tell us." Dr. Carter moved to Danny's station and began connecting her computer equipment. "The mathematical patterns in the signal suggest they're trying to teach us their language. Look at this!" She pointed to her screen. "They're showing us numbers first, then basic concepts." For the next 6 hours, Lisa and Danny worked together to decode the alien message. Jake ordered the ship to full stop and called all senior officers to the bridge. Chief Engineer Patricia Stone arrived first, followed by Security Officer Ryan Hayes and Medical Officer Dr. Kevin Brown. "What do we have?" Patricia asked, looking at the displays covered with alien symbols. "First contact," Jake said simply. "And I don't think it's good news." Lisa looked up from her work, her face pale. "Captain, I've translated enough to understand the basic message. These aliens call themselves the Cathari. They're asking for help." "Help with what?" Ryan asked. "Something they call the Devourers," Lisa continued. "From what I can understand, it's some kind of ancient machine intelligence. It wakes up every few million years and destroys entire civilizations." Danny added more details as he decoded additional parts of the message. "The Cathari say the Devourers consume everything. They turn planets into metal and build more of themselves. Dozens of alien species have already been destroyed." Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. "How close are these Devourers to Earth?" Lisa worked on her computer for several minutes. Before answering, according to their star charts, about 3 months away. "Captain, the Cathari specifically mentioned that they've detected our radio signals. They know humans exist." "Then why are they asking for help?" Patricia wondered. "If they're so advanced that they can detect our signals from 12 light years away, what could we possibly do that they can't?" Danny found the answer in another part of the message. "They don't think we can help. The Cathari are broadcasting to everyone, hoping someone, somewhere, might have a solution. But they specifically say that young species like humans are too primitive to fight something this powerful." Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They don't know humans very well, do they?" Jake stood up and walked to the main display, showing the alien star charts. Red markers indicated systems already consumed by the Devourers. The path of destruction was heading straight toward human space. "Lisa, how much of their message have you decoded?" he asked. "Maybe 30%. But I'm getting better at it. Give me another few hours and I should understand most of it." "Do it. I want to know everything about these Devourers and what they can do." Jake turned to Patricia. "How fast can we get to the Cathari homeworld?" Patricia calculated quickly. At maximum speed, about 2 weeks, but Captain, we're just one ship. What can we do against something that destroys entire civilizations? I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. Jake looked at each of his officers. The Cathari reached out in fear, asking for help. Well, they're going to get it. Over the next several hours, Lisa continued decoding the alien message. What she learned painted a picture of terror spreading across the galaxy. Had appeared without warning in a distant system, their massive ships like nothing anyone had ever seen. They consumed the local star's energy to power themselves and stripped every planet down to its core. The alien species tried to fight back. Their most advanced weapons had no effect. The Devourers adapted to every attack, learning and growing stronger. When the aliens tried to evacuate, the machines followed them, tracking refugee fleets across space and destroying them one by one. The Cathari. Homeworld of Aquanus was a water world with peaceful blue oceans and floating cities. They had never known war or conflict. Their technology was incredibly advanced, but it was designed for exploration and science, not warfare. When the Devourers appeared in nearby systems, the Cathari realized they had no way to defend themselves. Captain Lisa called out, "I've found something important. The Cathari aren't just asking for help, they're trying to warn everyone. They've detected that the Devourers are learning about each species they destroy. Every time they consume a civilization, they become smarter and more dangerous." Jake studied the new information on his display. So by the time they reach Earth, they'll know how to fight dozens of different alien species. Exactly. But Captain, there's something else. The Cathari don't understand human civilization at all. They mention our radio signals, but they think we're just another peaceful species like themselves. They have no idea what Earth is really like. Ryan grinned. They don't know we're from a death world. A what? Denny asked. Patricia explained. Most planets that develop life are relatively calm and safe. Earth is different. We have predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme weather. Most alien species would consider Earth uninhabitable. That's why they call it a death world. Cathari evolved in peaceful oceans under a gentle star, Lisa added. They've never had to fight for survival like humans have. They don't understand that some species become strong precisely because their homeworld tries to kill them every day. Jake made his decision. Danny sent a message back to Earth. Tell them what we found and that we're going to help the Cathari. Patricia plot a course for their homeworld at maximum speed. Sir Ryan said we're just one exploration ship. We don't even have military weapons. No, but we have something the Devourers have never seen before, Jake replied. We have humans, and humans don't give up, even when the odds are impossible. The UHS Frontier turned toward the Cathari system and jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, automated beacons began broadcasting Jake's message back to Earth. The message was simple. Aliens had reached out in fear, and humans were walking in to help. In the depths of space, ancient machines continued their slow but steady approach toward both the Cathari homeworld and, eventually, Earth. The Devourers had consumed 47 different species over the millennia. Soon they would learn what made humans different from all the others. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when Deathworlders went to war. The UHS Frontier dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Cathari system. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the main screen in amazement. The alien homeworld of Aquanus was beautiful beyond anything he had ever seen. A deep blue. Oceans covered the entire planet, with floating cities that sparkled like jewels on the water's surface. 3 small moons hung in the sky, their silver light making the ocean shimmer. Danny, send our greeting message, Jake ordered. Let them. No, we're here to help. Communications Officer Danny Rodriguez had spent the 2-week journey learning more of the Cathari language. Message sent, Captain. They're responding now. The reply came within minutes. The alien voice was musical and flowing, like water running over smooth stones. Danny translated as the message played. They're surprised anyone came at all, Danny said. Most species just ignored their call for help or ran in the opposite direction. They want to know if we're refugees looking for shelter. Tell them we're here to fight the Devourers, Jake replied. There was a long pause after Danny sent the message.
Oh.
When the aliens responded, their tone had changed completely. "Captain, they don't understand. They're asking if we know what we're talking about. They want to know if we realize the Devourers have destroyed 47 civilizations." "Tell them we know exactly what we're facing," Jake said firmly. Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her analysis of the Cathari transmissions. "Captain, I don't think they believe us. Their language has words for concepts like confusion and misunderstanding, but no direct translation for warfare or combat. They literally don't have words for fighting." An hour later, the UHS Frontier docked with one of the floating cities. The airlock opened to reveal the first Cathari that humans had ever seen in person. Ambassador Veltar was tall and graceful, with smooth blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer like water. His large eyes were completely black, and gill slits along his neck opened and closed as he breathed. He moved with fluid motions that reminded Jake of a swimmer even on dry land. "Welcome, humans from the distant world called Earth," Veltar said in perfect English. "I have learned your language from your radio transmissions. I must confess, we are grateful you came, but we do not understand why you would travel so far to face certain death." Jake extended his hand in greeting. Veltar looked at it curiously before carefully reaching out to touch it.
Alien skin.
Felt cool and smooth, like polished stone. "We came because you asked for help," Jake said simply. "That's what neighbors do." Veltar's large eyes widened. "But you are not our neighbors. Your world is many light years away. We have never met before this moment. Distance doesn't matter," Jake replied. "If someone needs help, you help them." The Cathari ambassador led the human delegation through the floating city. Everything was designed with flowing curves and smooth surfaces. There were no sharp edges anywhere. The buildings seemed to grow organically from the water itself, and transportation moved through tubes filled with flowing liquid. "This is incredible," Dr. Carter whispered as they walked. "Their entire civilization is built around harmony with their environment. Look at how everything flows together." Veltar was pleased by her appreciation. "We have lived in peace for over 2 million years. Our world provides everything we need. The oceans are calm, the climate is stable, and we have no predators or dangerous creatures." Security Officer Ryan Hayes stopped walking. "No predators at all?" "None," Veltar confirmed. "Why would nature create creatures designed to harm others? That would be inefficient and cruel." Ryan exchanged glances with Jake. They were beginning to understand just how different these aliens were from humans. The delegation was brought to a large chamber where dozens of Cathari scientists and leaders had gathered. They all had the same graceful appearance as Veltar, but Jake could see fear in their dark eyes. These were people who had never known danger, and now they faced the complete destruction of everything they had ever known. "Please, tell us about these Devourers," Jake said as they sat down around a circular table that seemed to be made of living coral. A Cathari scientist named Morden activated a holographic display. The images that appeared made the human delegation gasp. The Devourers were massive mechanical creatures, each one the size of a city. They moved through space like a swarm of metal insects, leaving nothing but empty void behind them. They appeared in the Zephyr system 6 months ago, Morden explained. 3 billion Zephyrians lived on 4 beautiful worlds. Within 1 week, everything was gone. The Devourers consumed the planets themselves, using the matter to build more of their kind. Hologram showed the aftermath. Where once there had been green worlds and blue skies, now there were only twisted metal constructs drifting in space. "How do they fight?" Ryan asked. "They adapt to any resistance," another scientist replied. "We have studied the remains of 30 different species' defense systems. Each time the Devourers encounter a new weapon or strategy, they learn from it and become immune. They grow stronger with every victory." Jake leaned forward. "What kinds of weapons have been used against them?" Morden showed them examples. Energy beams that could vaporize asteroids, gravity weapons that could crush mountains, quantum disruptors that could tear apart molecules. All useless against the Devourers. "Every species fights the same way," Veltar said sadly. "They use their most advanced technology, coordinate their fleets perfectly, and attack with precise strategy. The Devourers study their tactics and adapt within hours." What about ground combat? Ryan asked. Fighting on planets? The Cathari looked confused. Ground combat? I do not understand. Ryan stood up and walked to the holographic display. The Devourers land on a planet. What do the people do? How do they fight back? They evacuate, Morden said, as if it were obvious. Why would anyone stay to face certain death? That would be illogical. Because sometimes fighting back works. Ryan replied. Sometimes you can win even when the odds are terrible. Veltar's gills fluttered with what Jake was learning was a sign of confusion. But the Devourers are machines, do not feel fear or pain. They cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. Mighting them would be like trying to argue with a natural disaster. Ryan smiled grimly. Ambassador, let me tell you about natural disasters on Earth. For the next hour, Ryan explained human history to the amazed Cathari. He told them about earthquakes that destroyed cities, but humans rebuilt them. Floods that wiped out entire regions, but people returned and built again. Volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, tornadoes, and ice ages that should have killed humanity, but instead made them stronger. Your species fights natural disasters? Morden asked in disbelief. We don't just fight them, Ryan continued. We fight each other. For thousands of years, humans have been at war with other humans. We've developed weapons and tactics that would horrify peaceful species. We've learned to survive in conditions that would kill most life forms. Dr. Carter added her own presentation about Earth's environment. The Cathari listened in growing shock as she described predators like sharks, bears, and poisonous snakes. She explained how humans had to compete with these creatures for survival, how they learned to hunt and fight and adapt. Your world tries to kill you, Veltar whispered. Every day, Carter confirmed. But that's what made us strong. We learned to survive in any condition, fight any enemy, overcome any obstacle. Chief Engineer Patricia Stone had been studying the wreckage of Cathari, defensive systems, while the others talked. Now she stood up to share her findings. Your weapons are incredible, Patricia said. More advanced than anything we have, but they're designed by people who think logically and efficiently. You build things to work perfectly under ideal conditions. She activated her own holographic display, showing human military equipment. Our weapons are different. They're designed to work when everything goes wrong, when you're scared and injured and desperate. They're built to be simple, reliable, and brutal. The Cathari stared at images of human tanks, fighter jets, and assault rifles. To their peaceful eyes, the machines looked primitive and violent. We don't understand, Veltar said. How can such crude devices be effective against advanced technology? Because the Devourers have never faced anything like humans before, Jake explained. They've learned to counter the tactics of dozens of peaceful civilizations, but they've never fought a species that evolved through constant warfare on a death world. Patricia brought up tactical displays showing how other species had fought the Devourers. Look at these battle patterns. Every species fights the same way. Organized formations, coordinated attacks, logical strategies. It's exactly what the Devourers expect. How would humans fight differently? Morden asked. Ryan grinned. We'd cheat. We'd lie. We'd pretend to run away and then ambush them. We'd use their own weapons against them. We'd fight dirty and break every rule of civilized warfare. The Cathari looked horrified. But that would be ... dishonorable. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead, Jake said bluntly. The Devourers don't care about honor or rules, so we won't either. Veltar was quiet for a long moment, his gills opening and closing rapidly. Finally, he spoke. You truly believe you can defeat an enemy that has destroyed 47 civilizations. 3 days after the UHS Frontier arrived at Aquinas, the Cathari detection systems picked up new signals approaching their system. Ambassador Veltar rushed to the human quarters with news that made Captain Jake Morrison smile for the first time since receiving the alien distress call. Captain Morrison, your people have sent reinforcements, Veltar said, his gills fluttering with excitement. Our sensors showed dozens of human ships approaching. Jake activated his communication equipment and contacted the incoming fleet. The response came immediately in a familiar voice that made him grin. Jake, You old space dog? What kind of trouble have you gotten yourself into this time? The voice belonged to Admiral Kate Sullivan, Jake's former commander and longtime friend. Right. Kind that might end human civilization if we don't stop it here, Jake replied. Kate, please tell me you brought more than just military ships. You know me better than that, Kate laughed. I brought everything that could fly and carry a weapon. We've got Navy destroyers, cargo haulers with jury-rigged weapons, mining ships loaded with explosives, and even some racing enthusiasts who wanted to help? Veltar looked confused. Racing enthusiasts? What possible military value could recreational vehicles provide? You'd be surprised, Jake said with a grin. When the human fleet arrived, it was unlike anything the Cathari had. You ever seen? The ships came in all shapes and sizes, from sleek military vessels to converted civilian craft that looked like they were held together with spare parts and determination. The flagship was the UHS Retribution, a massive battleship that dwarfed every other vessel in the system. Admiral Sullivan came aboard the Cathari station with her senior officers. She was a tall woman with gray hair and scars on her hands from years of military service. Her presence filled the room with quiet confidence that even the aliens could sense. So these are our new allies, she said, studying the Cathari with interest. Ambassador Veltar, Captain Morrison has told me about your situation. We're here to help. Admiral Sullivan, we are grateful for your assistance, Veltar replied. But I must ask, do you truly understand what you are facing? Devourers have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Kate smiled grimly. Ambassador, those civilizations made one critical mistake. They fought fair. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Taylor stepped forward with a large case of equipment. With your permission, I'd like to show you how humans approach warfare. Demonstration took place in one of the station's larger chambers. Ben opened his case and began pulling out various human weapons and tools. The Cathari watched with growing alarm as he displayed assault rifles, explosive charges, and combat knives. These are our basic infantry weapons, Ben explained. Nothing fancy, but they work in any environment and keep working even when damaged. Morden, the Cathari scientist, examined one of the rifles. This design is very crude compared to our energy weapons. The projectiles are simple metal bullets. That's the point, Ben replied. Energy weapons are complex. They can be disrupted, overloaded, or adapted to. A bullet is just a piece of metal moving very fast. There's nothing to adapt to except the fact that it's going to punch a hole in. Whatever it hits, he moved to the next display. These are mining charges designed to break apart asteroids. We've loaded our cargo ships with thousands of them. But mining charges are not weapons, Veltar protested. They are now, Ben grinned. You strap them to small, remote-controlled ships and ram them into enemy vessels. Instant torpedo. The Cathari looked horrified. You sacrifice your own ships? It kills the enemy, yes. We build more ships. The Devourers can't bring back their dead. Admiral Sullivan took over the presentation. Ambassador, let me explain human military philosophy. Other species seem to fight like this was some kind of formal duel with rules and honor. We fight like our survival depends on it because it does. She activated a holographic display showing human battle formations. Every other species fights with organized fleets and neat formations. Predictable. Easy for the Devourers to counter. The display changed to show chaotic, swirling patterns. Humans fight in organized chaos, coordinate our attacks, but every individual unit is free to improvise and adapt. No two human battles look the same because we make it up as we go along. Dr. Patricia Stone had been working with Cathari engineers to study the enemy's previous victories. Now she shared her findings with the growing crowd of aliens and humans. I've analyzed the wreckage from 17 different battles, Patricia announced. The Devourers follow predictable patterns when they adapt to enemy tactics. They study the most common attack methods and develop counters for them. She brought up technical displays showing Devourer adaptive systems. But their adaptation algorithms assume logical, efficient opponents. They don't account for opponents who do things that make no tactical sense. What do you mean? Veltar asked. Commander Alex Wright, one of the human fighter pilots, stepped forward, like using a damaged ship as a weapon instead of retreating to repair it. or pretending to run away, and then turning around to attack when they're not expecting it. But that would be lying, Morden said with shock. Exactly, Alex replied cheerfully. The Devourers have fought honest opponents for millions of years. They have no programming to deal with creatures who lie, cheat, and fight dirty. The real test of human tactics came 2 days later, when Cathari sensors detected a Devourer probe fleet entering the outer edge of their system. 3 massive mechanical ships, each one bristling with weapons that had destroyed dozens of civilizations.
This
is it, Admiral Sullivan announced over the communication system. All human ships, remember the plan. Make them think we're just another organized fleet until we get close. The human ships formed into neat military formations and began advancing toward the probe fleet. The Cathari watched from their safe distance, amazed by the discipline and coordination. Your fleet movements are very precise, Veltar commented to Jake. Almost as organized as our own military formations. That's the idea, Jake replied. We want them to think we're predictable. The probe fleet detected the approaching humans and began deploying their standard defensive measures. Energy barriers flickered to life around the Devourer ships, and weapon systems that had vaporized countless alien vessels began charging up. All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan, came the voice over the radio. Execute Protocol Chaos in 3, 2, 1, mark. What happened next made the Cathari question everything they thought they knew about warfare. The neat human formations exploded into apparent disorder. Ships scattered in all directions, some diving toward the nearest planet, others climbing toward the system's outer edge. Several vessels appeared to lose control completely, spinning wildly as they accelerated. What are they doing? Beltar cried out in alarm. Your fleet is falling apart. No, Jake said calmly. Now they're fighting like humans. The chaos was actually carefully planned disorder. Commander Wright led a squadron of fighters in what looked like a panicked retreat, drawing the Devourers' attention and weapons fire. While the enemy focused on the fleeing fighters, a converted mining ship approached from the opposite direction. Hidden in the shadow of a large asteroid, the mining ship was the prospector's dream. Commanded by Captain Lucy Chen, a civilian volunteer, who had spent 30 years blasting rocks in asteroid fields, she waited until the last possible moment, then released her entire cargo hold full of mining charges. The explosion lit up the entire system. When the light faded, one of the Devourer ships was gone, consumed by the very charges it had dismissed. As primitive mining equipment, the remaining 2 probe ships tried to adapt, reconfiguring their defenses against explosive attacks. But the humans were already switching tactics. Racing ships designed for speed competitions suddenly revealed hidden weapons and began hit-and-run attacks, too fast for the heavy Devourer guns to track. Possible, Morden whispered as he watched the battle. They're using recreational vehicles. As military fighters, those aren't just any racing ships, Jake explained. Most of those pilots are former military who took up racing after they retired. They know how to fight. The battle continued for 3 hours with humans constantly changing their tactics before the Devourers could adapt. When energy weapons proved ineffective, they switched to kinetic projectiles. When direct attacks failed, they used debris and asteroids as cover for ambushes. The final Devourer ship was destroyed when Lieutenant Maria Santos, flying a converted cargo hauler, pretended her ship was crippled and drifting helplessly. When the enemy moved in to finish her off, she revealed that her entire cargo hold was packed with nuclear warheads. The explosion could be seen from the Cathari homeworld in the aftermath. Admiral Sullivan's fleet regrouped to assess damage and plan for the main Devourer force that was still approaching. The humans had lost 6 ships and 37 crew members. Casualties that shocked the peaceful Cathari, but barely registered with the battle-hardened humans. How did you know those tactics would work? Beltar asked Jake as they watched this human ships begin repairs. We didn't, Jake admitted. That's the point. We tried things the Devourers had never seen before, because no sane military force would fight that way. But humans aren't sane by galactic standards. We're survivors from a death world, and we fight like it. 2 weeks after the probe fleet battle, the main Devourer force arrived like a storm of metal and death. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UHS Retribution, watching as hundreds of massive enemy ships dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Cathari system. "My God," whispered Commander Alex Wright as the tactical display updated with new contacts. "There are so many of them." Each Devourer ship was enormous, some larger than entire human cities. They moved with perfect coordination, their formations precise and deadly. Energy readings showed weapons powerful enough to crack planets and defensive systems that had stopped every attack for millions of years. "All human ships. This is Admiral Sullivan," Kate announced over the fleet communication system. "Remember what we're fighting for. Behind us is a peaceful species that has never known war. Behind them, 3 months away, is Earth. We stop them here, or our families die." Captain Jake Morrison watched from the Cathari Command Center as the human fleet prepared for battle. Ambassador Veltar stood beside him, his gills fluttering with fear as he stared at the approaching enemy. "Admiral Sullivan, your fleet has perhaps 200 ships," Veltar said over the communication link. "The Devourers have brought over 600. How can you possibly win?" "Numbers don't tell the whole story," Kate replied calmly. "We don't need to destroy every enemy ship. You just need to stop them from destroying you." The battle began when the Devourer fleet detected the human presence and immediately moved to attack. Their ships formed into the same precise formations that had conquered 47 civilizations. Energy weapons charging with power that could melt asteroids. What happened next confused the Devourer targeting computers. Instead of forming defensive lines or charging forward in organized attack formations, the human fleet scattered like leaves in a windstorm. Ships broke off in dozens of different directions, some heading for the outer planets, others diving toward the system's star, and many simply disappearing behind asteroids and space debris. "They're running away," observed Devourer Ship Prime, its mechanical voice broadcasting to the fleet. "Standard pursuit formation. Destroy fleeing vessels in order of size." But the humans weren't running. Major Nicole Barnes commanded a converted cargo ship that appeared to be fleeing toward the outer system. Behind her flew 6 similar vessels, all broadcasting distress signals and emergency codes. To the Devourers, they looked like panicked civilians trying to escape. The enemy ships moved to intercept, just as Nicole had hoped. "All cargo ships execute Trojan Horse in 5 seconds, Nicole announced to her small fleet. "Remember, we only get one chance at this."
Hey.
Ships suddenly stopped running. Their hulls split open like flowers blooming, revealing that each one was packed with hundreds of human Marines in combat armor. The soldiers launched from their hidden positions using personal rocket packs, streaming toward the surprised Devourer. "Ships like angry hornets." "Possible," transmitted Devourer Ship Prime. "Enemy vessels are deploying infantry in space. This violates all tactical databases." The Devourers had adapted to fight starships and energy weapons, but they had no programming for dealing with individual soldiers armed with simple explosives and cutting tools. The Marines landed on the enemy hulls and began working their way inside, placing charges on critical systems and fighting their way through passages designed for much larger mechanical beings. While Nicole's ground saw confused part of the enemy fleet, Chief Engineer Tony Martinez executed his own plan. His ship, the UHS Ingenuity, looked like a damaged civilian vessel limping toward the nearest planet for emergency repairs. Emergency broadcasts begged for assistance and reported critical system failures. Tony had spent weeks studying how the Devourers responded to crippled ships. They always moved in to capture and analyze the technology before destroying it. This time, they were walking into a trap. The Ingenuity allowed itself to be caught by a Devourer, tractor beams, and pulled into the cargo bay of one of the massive enemy ships. As soon as they were inside, Tony activated every explosive device on one. His vessel, the explosion tore through the Devourer ship from the inside, destroying systems that no external weapon had ever been able to touch. 3 enemy vessels were crippled by the blast, their perfect coordination disrupted as they tried to understand what had happened. Enemy tactics do not match any known patterns, Devourer Ship Prime transmitted to its fleet. Recommend full defensive protocols while we analyzed these new methods. But Admiral Sullivan wasn't giving them time to analyze anything. All ships, execute random walk protocol, keep them guessing. The human fleet began what could only be described as organized insanity. Ships would group together for coordinated attacks, then suddenly break apart and flee in different directions. Fighters would dive straight at enemy vessels in apparent suicide runs, only to veer away at the last second while launching their weapons. Larger ships pretended to be destroyed, drifting dead in space until enemy vessels came close enough for point-blank attacks. Dr. Lisa Carter had spent the weeks before the battle studying captured Devourer technology with a team of human and Catheri scientists. Now, watching from the command center, she realized something crucial. "Captain Morrison, I need to speak with Admiral Sullivan immediately," Lisa said urgently. Jake opened a communication channel. "Kate, Dr. Carter has something important, Admiral." "I've been watching how the Devourers respond to our tactics," Lisa explained quickly. "Their adaptation systems are designed to analyze logical patterns and develop counters. But human tactics aren't logical. We're not following any pattern they can understand." "What does that mean for the battle?" Kate asked, while maneuvering her ship to avoid enemy fire. "Means their adaptive systems are overloading," Lisa continued excitedly. "They're trying to process too much random data. If we can push them far enough, we might cause complete system failures." Kate understood immediately. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan. New orders. Do the most illogical thing you can think of. Repeat. Abandon all tactical sense and fight like maniacs." What followed was the strangest space battle in galactic history. Commander Wright led his fighter squadron in an attack pattern that involved flying in perfect circles around enemy ships while playing human music at full volume. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez convinced his crew to fight their battle while standing on their heads, claiming it helped them think differently. Captain Bob Johnson turned his mining ship into a giant slingshot, using asteroids to launch small fighters at impossible velocities. The Devourers, sophisticated battle computers, began experiencing cascading failures as they tried to process tactics that violated every known law of military strategy. Ships that had functioned perfectly for millions of years suddenly found themselves unable to predict human behavior or coordinate effective responses. "System errors increasing," reported Devourer Ship Prime, its own voice beginning to stutter. "Human tactics appear to be random noise. Cannot establish pattern recognition. Cannot adapt." The turning point came when Captain Morrison himself made a decision that shocked everyone, including his own crew. "Admiral Sullivan, I'm taking the UHS Frontier on a direct attack, run against the Devourer command ship," Jake announced. "Jake, that's suicide," Kate replied. "That ship is 10 times your size and has enough firepower to destroy a moon." "Exactly," Jake said calmly. "They'll never expect anyone to be that stupid." It's a UHS Frontier, the small exploration vessel that had first received the Cathari distress call, began accelerating directly toward the largest Devourer ship in the enemy fleet. Every weapon on the massive enemy vessel turned toward the tiny human ship, enough firepower to vaporize it 100 times over. But Jake wasn't planning to fight the command ship. He was planning something much more insane. "All crew to escape. Pods," Jake ordered over his ship's communication system. "Launch in 30 seconds. "Captain, what are you doing?" asked Dr. Carter from the command center. "Something no sane person would ever attempt," Jake replied. "I'm going to ram them." The crew of the UHS Frontier evacuated in their escape pods, just as Jake programmed the ship's navigation system for a direct collision course. In the cargo hold, it placed every nuclear warhead the human fleet could spare. Devourer Ship Prime calculated the approaching vessel's trajectory and determined it posed no significant threat. Ramming attack by such a small ship would barely damage their hull plating. They focused their attention on more dangerous human vessels. Dismissing the UHS Frontier as irrelevant, it was the last mistake they ever made. Jake's ship struck the Devourer command vessel at nearly 20% of light speed. The nuclear warheads detonated simultaneously, creating a brief star in the depths of space. When the light faded, both ships were gone, along with the central coordination system that controlled the entire Devourer fleet. Without their command ship, the remaining enemy vessels began operating independently, their perfect coordination broken. Human ships that had been barely holding their own suddenly found themselves fighting confused, isolated opponents instead of a unified fleet. All ships, press the attack, Admiral Sullivan ordered. They're disconnected from each other now. Take them apart, piece by piece. The silence after the battle was unlike anything the Cathari had ever experienced. For the first time in 6 months, their long-range sensors showed no approaching Devourer ships. The ancient machines that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years were gone, reduced to floating metal debris scattered across their star system. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the damaged UHS Retribution, looking out at the wreckage of both fleets. More than half the human ships were destroyed or badly damaged. Escape pods drifted everywhere, carrying survivors from vessels that had been sacrificed to win the battle. The cost of victory weighed heavily on her shoulders. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from the Cathari homeworld," reported Communications Officer Danny Rodriguez, who had transferred to the flagship after the UHS Frontier's destruction. "Psst. Put it through," Kate replied. Ambassador Veltar's voice filled the bridge thick with emotion that the translation systems could barely convey. "Admiral Sullivan, on behalf of my people and 47 destroyed civilizations, I thank you. You've done the impossible. The Devourers are defeated." Looked at the casualty reports on her screen. 3,000 humans dead, including Captain Jake Morrison, who had given his life to break the enemy's command structure. By human military standards, it was an acceptable loss for such a complete victory. But she knew the peaceful Cathari would be horrified by the numbers. "The cost was high, Ambassador," Kate said quietly. "We lost many good people today. Your people fought with a courage we cannot comprehend," Veltar replied. "They willingly died to save strangers they had never met. We will remember their sacrifice forever." Dr. Lisa Carter had survived the battle aboard one of the medical ships that stayed behind the main fighting. Now she worked with Cathari scientists to study the wreckage of the Devourer fleet, trying to understand how the ancient machines had been defeated. "It's remarkable," she told Veltar, as they examined the remains of the enemy command ship. The Devourer's adaptive systems were incredibly sophisticated. They could have countered any logical military strategy, but human tactics overloaded their programming with too much random data. Morden, the Cathari scientist, studied the battle recordings with amazement. "Your species fought in ways that violated every principle of efficient warfare, yet somehow, this inefficiency became your greatest strength." "That's because we're not efficient by your standards," Lisa explained. "We're survivors." "The most efficient predator doesn't always win. Sometimes the most adaptable one does. Sometimes the most stubborn one does. And sometimes the craziest one does." 3 weeks after the battle, delegations from across the galaxy began arriving at Aquinas. News of the Devourer defeat had spread faster than anyone thought possible. Species that had been in hiding for months emerged from their refugee fleets. Civilizations that had prepared for extinction suddenly found themselves free to return to their homeworlds. The first to arrive were the Zephyrians, aquatic beings whose 3 worlds had been the first consumed by the Devourers. Their leader, Prime Speaker Colvin, met with Admiral Sullivan and the surviving human commanders. "We heard rumors that the Devourers were defeated," Colvin said through his translation device. "We did not believe such a thing was possible. How did your species accomplish what 47 others could not?" Major Nicole Barnes, who had led the Marine assault during the battle, answered simply, "We cheated." Colvin's large eyes blinked in confusion. "Cheated? The Devourers expected fair fights with organized enemies," Nicole explained. "So we fought unfairly with chaotic tactics. They adapted to logical strategies, so we used illogical ones. They were playing chess while we were playing poker." More species arrived each day, each with the same questions. How had humanity defeated the unstoppable machines? What technology had they used? What ancient weapons had they discovered? The answers disappointed most of them. "We used mining charges as torpedoes." Chief Engineer Tony Martinez explained to a group of crystalline beings whose homeworld had been consumed 2 months earlier. We turned cargo ships into bombs, pretended to retreat, and then attacked when they weren't expecting it. But these are not advanced tactics, protested one of the crystalline beings. Any species could use such methods. Any species could. Tony agreed, but most species are too civilized to try them. You develop advanced technology and sophisticated strategies because you're intelligent and peaceful. We develop dirty tricks and desperate tactics because our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Dr. Patricia Stone had been working with engineers from dozens of species to help them understand human military philosophy. The task was proving more difficult than she had expected. I don't understand how your chaotic methods can be taught, complained an insectoid engineer whose people had survived by fleeing to the galaxy's edge. How do we learn to fight without logic? You can't learn it, Patricia replied honestly. Not the way we do it. You evolved on peaceful worlds with stable climates and no major predators. Your species developed intelligence through cooperation and efficiency. Our species developed intelligence through competition and survival. The alien engineer clicked his mandibles in frustration. Then how can we defend ourselves if the devourers return? Or if something else like them appears? Patricia smiled and gestured toward the human ships being repaired in orbit around Aquinas. That's why we're staying. The announcement that humans plan to establish permanent colonies throughout the galaxy created a stir among the assembled alien species. Some welcomed the protection, others worried about having such violent neighbors, and many simply couldn't understand why anyone would want to live away from their homeworld. Ambassador Veltar addressed these concerns during a large gathering on the floating city where first contact had occurred. Representatives from 23 different species attended, more diversity than had been seen in the galaxy for centuries. Humans have asked for nothing in return for their sacrifice, Veltar announced. They do not seek to rule or conquer. They wish only to explore and to be ready if new threats emerge. But they are so violent, protested a representative from a species of gentle plant-like beings. How can we trust creatures who fight so brutally? Admiral Sullivan stood to answer. Because we fight brutally against enemies, not against friends. The same instincts that make humans dangerous to threats make us loyal to allies. We protect what we care about. And what do you care about? Asked Colv. Kate looked around the room at the dozens of alien species, each one representing millions or billions of lives that would have been lost if the devourers had continued their advance. Life, she said simply. Freedom. The right of peaceful species to exist without fear. The same things you care about, just with a different way of protecting them. Over the following months, human settlements began appearing throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors or overlords, but as neighbors and guardians. Former military personnel established training centers where alien species could learn basic defensive tactics. Human engineers worked with local scientists to develop defensive systems based on unpredictable strategies rather than perfect efficiency. Dr. Carter founded the Interspecies Defense Research Institute on Aquinas, where humans and aliens studied. Together, the goal was not to turn peaceful species into warriors, but to help them understand how to survive when peace failed. We're not trying to make you fight like humans, Carter explained to a class of mixed alien students. We're trying to help you think like survivors when you need to. The most important change was philosophical. For millions of years, galactic civilization had assumed that intelligence and advancement came only through peaceful cooperation. The human victory against the devourers proved that sometimes survival required different qualities: stubbornness, adaptability, and the willingness to fight dirty when necessary, Captain. Jake Morrison's sacrifice became legendary throughout the galaxy. Stories of his ramming attacks spread from world to world, inspiring other species to consider what they would be willing to do to protect their homes and families. A monument was built on Aquinas to honor all the humans who died in the battle. The inscription, written in hundreds of alien languages, read simply, "They answered when strangers called for help." But perhaps the most lasting legacy was the change in how the galaxy viewed itself. The peaceful species that had hidden from the devourers began to emerge with new confidence. They knew that somewhere among the stars, descendants of a violent death world stood ready to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. Trade routes reopened. Scientific expeditions resumed. Art and culture began to flourish again as species no longer lived in fear of ancient machines. The galaxy was healing, protected by guardians who had learned to fight not from choice, but from necessity. And in the depths of space, human exploration ships continued their missions, searching for new wonders and watching for new threats. Because that's what Deathworlders do. They survive, they adapt, and they protect those who cannot protect themselves. The age of fear was over. The age of human guardianship had begun.